the expectations for the softball team and how they've been better than baseball this year. Coming into the year, I thought both would make a postseason appearance, like in a regional, but for softball to have the year they've had, potentially winning 40 games this year, hosting a regional potentially next week, I mean, that's just crazy to think about. And they were in a worse spot. That softball has just been about as good as, I think, far exceeding anyone's expectations.
Sure. And again, they'll be in action tonight, taking on Alabama around 8 o'clock on the SEC Network. Last night, another welcome home event. Coach Beamer speaking out there in Aiken. You were there the other night when they were out there in Somerville. Chris went there yesterday for the Aiken event and talking about a number of things, but one that piques my interest a little bit. Dave, if we get cut number 12 here, in reference to Rasul Faison and the frustration over the lack of decision that's been made in reference to his eligibility, Coach Beamer didn't rule out the possibility of maybe taking some legal action with the NCAA.
We're waiting to see what the NCAA says, but certainly we want to be able to do, everything in our power that Sewell's comfortable doing. We certainly want to exhaust all options if it gets to that point, but hopefully we get good news from the NCAA and we don't have to go to Plan B.
Again, I like your chances if you're suing the NCAA because they typically lose just about every kind of court case they're involved in. You hope it doesn't come to that because that's a lot of things to have to deal with to get a player eligible, but it sounds like they wouldn't be opposed to doing that if it did come to that. But at some point, you just hope they come to their senses and say, hey, we're ruling everybody else eligible. Why not this guy?
And it's been about, we're in May now, so about 4.5 months since this whole thing started where they filled out the paperwork. They've done everything the NCAA has required them to do time and time again when they ask for more things. But I don't know what the holdup is at this point. And you really don't want it to come to a point where South Carolina is just taking matters into its own hands and deciding to take this thing to the courts. Like, there was a case at Rutgers recently with a guy from the class of 2019 who was applying for an extra year, and I guess the NCAA didn't approve it or whatever, or they waited, just like Faison is here, and then they go to the courts and it gets approved. So you really don't want it to come to that, but it's like you got to do what you got to do at the end of the day. Yeah,
and again, this all falls under the Pavia rule that we're calling it now. It's funny, even on the Gamecock online website, it even says applying for eligibility through the Pavia rule. So that's obviously sticking there. But again, it kind of references your playing time at junior college shouldn't count towards your eligibility because of the potential of NIL and all that kind of stuff. Obviously not the same at that level, which is why Diego Pavia is able to play another season at Vanderbilt this upcoming year, as opposed to trying his hand at the NFL, which we obviously know he does not quite have the measurables or the prospects for. And I'm all for it. Hey, man, go get your bag while you can. But we kind of thought it was going to be a slam dunk that Faison was going to get eligible, but it seems to be a little more complicated than that.
And this messes up your plans for the season because Faison, you're not bringing him in to be a backup. You're playing him this year, and you're trying to fill the void that Rocket Sanders leaves. And yes, you have Oscar Attaway, but I think you'd rather have him and Faison be the 1-2 punch in this running back room, kind of like what Rocket and Attaway were last year,
right?
Where you kind of split the carries. But if you don't have Faison this year, you're left with Attaway, Matthew Fuller, Jawarn Howell, Bradley Dunn. I mean, keep going down the list. It's not as deep as having Faison at the top.
You have, because I believe Dunn's on scholarship now, right?
He is, yes.
But you'd only have 3 guys that were initially scholarship running backs. And again, good for Bradley Dunn that he was able to get the scholarship after initially being a walk-on and all that kind of stuff. But he's not looked at as somebody that's going to be able to come in and be a hell of a producer in that room. So you would be down to 3 essential running backs at that point.
Yeah, and it makes it tough. And Shane mentioned this on Monday that, with this whole thing, they didn't go into the portal looking for a running back, right? They obviously shouldn't have to, considering Faison has played 3 years of college football, even though he was at Marshall in 2019, 3 actual seasons on the field. So I don't know what the deal is here. You hope it just gets cleared up here soon because you got summer coming up and then fall camp, and you don't want this thing hanging over your head until August 30th, and it's what are we doing here?
Well, and you don't want to be in fall camp having to make the decision of, okay, well, we hope he's going to get cleared, but if not, then Adway needs to be getting more reps with the ones, or like, having to divide those kind of things up. And again, we brought it up earlier talking to the Virginia Tech guy. You got 116 days until the season starts, so that feels like a long time. But again, the fact that we've gotten to this point and nothing's been made yet, you just don't know what they're going to do.
It's kind of ridiculous, and this isn't like the only case that's probably like this too. I mean, the NCAA's got, I know they got a lot going on there with lawsuits and different cases and stuff, but this should be an easy decision. Like, it's a yes or no. South Carolina's done what they've needed to do in terms of meeting the requirements. It's just give them an answer and move on.
And you hope it's not one of those situations like we had with Tez Walker a couple years ago where he gets ruled ineligible, and then halfway through the year, they're like, oh, by the way, he's eligible now. And you're like, well, dang, we didn't have him for the first 5 or 6 games of the year, and that could have been helpful or something along those lines.
That's going to be a problem if that's the case. And you're talking about, I mean, at that point, can he even practice then if he's not ruled?
I mean, I think you can.
Okay.
So Tez Walker with North Carolina practiced until he got eligible. Okay. Because, again, they're like, hey, any day now it could happen.
So he can stay in – so Faison hypothetically could stay in game shape.
Sure,
It's just, I mean, he's not playing in games, and the game speed is obviously a big thing that you got to worry about. So it's not ideal, but you really do hope this does not linger into the regular season, because that would be a big, big problem. Shane, frustrated right now. He'll be fuming by that point.
Definitely so. We'll get into more of what Beamer said a little bit later on in the show. But over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to be looking at South Carolina's 2025 opponents and getting some insight on where those respective programs stand coming away from spring practice. And again, a little under 4 months away from the season starting. Coming up next, we'll be talking to Gabe Yearman of Power Mizzou and get some insight into the Tigers as the Gamecocks will have to go to the other Columbia this upcoming year to try and take down Eli Drinkwitz's team for the second year in a row. That's coming up next. It is the there I go again, messing up the name. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, Captain Dave producing on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Wednesday on the game, continuing our trip around South Carolina's 2025 schedule, getting some insight onto what's going on with each and every opponent coming out of spring ball as we're a little under 4 months away, from the season getting rolling. And we now head out to Love Chevrolet phone lines. Welcome in Gabe Diermond of Power Mizzou to talk a little bit of Missouri Tigers football. Gabe, first of all, appreciate your time. How are things out in the other Columbia?
Not bad. Slowed down a little bit, which is good. That's always kind of the sign. Let's preview the opponents in 3 months. It's a slow time of year, right?
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate you taking your time with us this morning. Another probably exciting offseason out there as you're coming off the 11-win year after coming off 10 wins the year prior. I know maybe this time last year there was maybe still some questions of, okay, 1 year's great, but can you do it 2 years in a row? What's the feeling and vibe around Eli Drinkwitz heading into 2025?
Well, around the program, like they're talking like they should be right back in that conversation of, hey, let's win a couple games we didn't win last year and be in that college football playoff picture. I mean, he's talking about he thinks it's his best roster. He's talking about doing things that have never been done at Missouri. Now, nationally, I don't think there's that feeling there because you lose Brady Cook, you lose Luther Burden. Some of the bigger names are gone. So I think nationally people are going – I don't think Missouri's going to be in a lot of top 25s. I think this is going to be viewed as like a rebuild year, but I don't think they're looking at it that way at all.
Hey, it's Jack Veltri here from Gamecock Central. Appreciate you joining us, but I'll kind of follow up on that. I mean, what are, in your mind and people you talk to and stuff, what are the realistic expectations for this program? Like, can they get back to that mark they were at last year? Or is it kind of like what you're saying from the national people of like, maybe they take a step back?
Well, it's a hard team to assess because they really don't have a lot of questions. I mean, this should be Drinkwitz's best defense. The front seven, I think, with what they did in the transfer portal, ought to be really good. They're going to be fine at running back. They got a lot of young guys at wide receiver. They only have two big questions to me, but the problem is they're the biggest questions you can have. It's going to be a first-time starting quarterback, no matter who wins the job, and we're not sure what they have at left tackle. So, like, if you tell me we only have two questions, that seems good. If you tell me those are the two questions, I can see it going the wrong way, right? So I don't have a clue which side of this will be right. Like, I can see this team, especially given the schedule, being, in that 10-win area and having a shot at the college football playoff. If things go wrong, if the quarterback answer and the left tackle answer aren't good, like I can see this team scrapping to make a bowl game.
We're talking to Gabe Diermond of Power Mizzou, getting insight into the Missouri Tigers at the 2025 season. Speaking of Beau Pribula, who transfers over from Penn State, we saw at times last year did have to come in when Drew Aller got injured in the Wisconsin game, and they used him situationally as well because of his athleticism. I'm not sure how much availability media gets for practices out there, and obviously Missouri did not have a spring game this year, but what have you seen or learned of Pribula since he's been on campus out there in Missouri?
Not much, honestly. I mean, we don't get to see a lot. We get to see like 30 minutes of practice, which means stretching mostly. And even that, like I was covering basketball at that point, so I didn't go to a spring practice. I've seen nothing. The question with Beau is, okay, is he a guy who was blocked by a future first-round pick? Or, if you watch Drew Aller in the playoffs, you kind of go, hang on, how good is this guy, right? And so was he blocked by a guy that actually maybe isn't a great quarterback? I think obviously a lot of people still are high on Drew Aller, but you watch those playoff games and it's fair to have some questions. They really like Pribula. They certainly wouldn't have gone in the portal and spent what it cost to get a quarterback out of the portal if they didn't. The other two guys they looked pretty heavily at were Miller Moss from USC and Fernando Mendoza from Cal. Now, both of those guys have more of a proven track record, which means, hey, you've seen it, which is probably good in a lot of people's eyes, but also you kind of know what the ceiling is. You know what those guys are. With Beau, there's such a gap. I mean, we don't really have any idea what he is because he's played some, but like he's been a package quarterback, right? Other than I think he might have started one game that Aller was hurt for. Against a team that, that Penn State was just significantly better than, and they won that game. He played fine. But we're not really going to know until we see him, assuming he wins the starting job, which we think he will, but I don't think is a done deal. But we're not really going to know till mid-September.
I'm sure everyone loves talking about the fact that, or can't look over the fact that Luther Burden is no longer at Missouri, but also, Theo Weiss, we forget he was Missouri's leading receiver last year. He's gone too now in the NFL as a rookie. So my question to you is, you lose your top two guys at receiver. I mean, you got Marquis Johnson coming back as your, next best option, but how has Missouri gone about kind of replacing those guys? And can they, in your standpoint, I know you didn't get to really watch much in the spring, but can they replace that type of production, or should we expect maybe a little bit of a drop-off?
I think they can replace last year's production, because the truth is Luther didn't have a very good year last year. There's a reason he went 39 instead of 9, which is what a lot of people thought he was going to go, a year ago at this time. Also, like Brady Cook had a very average year last year. He was a really tough quarterback to assess, because most of the year he frankly was average to below average, but then he had 3 or 4 spots, and South Carolina fans saw one of them up close where it was like, okay, you have to have this, and all of a sudden he was phenomenal, and so his record looked probably better than the numbers and the play actually were. They went out, they got Kevin Coleman, who's a St. Louis kid from Mississippi State. I think Kevin was second team All SEC last year, and really probably should have been first. Like, he had close to 1,000 yards. He had a better year than Luther Burden did. Luther Burden got the first team nod because of his name and his reputation, but Coleman had a better year. Theo Weiss is definitely a tough guy to replace. Like you said, they've got Marquise Johnson. They've got a kid named Joshua Manning who's going into his 3rd year, who has played some in the first 2 years, shown some flashes. This needs to be the year he takes a step. They had a couple of receivers redshirt last year, and then they brought in 3 true freshmen, and one of them's a kid out of Florida named Donovan Alubade, and everybody around the program, he's a 4-star kid. Everybody around the program expects him to play quite a bit this year.
Talking to Gabe DeAirman of Power Mizzou and the Love Chevrolet phone lines. You mentioned Kevin Coleman coming over from Mississippi State. You also added some key guys on defense. Jalen Catalon had 5 picks for Arkansas last year, and Damon Wilson coming over from Georgia, having a couple sacks on that talented defense as well. Who's the most exciting portal ad that Missouri's brought in this offseason?
I think it's got to be Damon Wilson. He was the number 2 ranked player in the portal in our rankings, and has, NFL ability. If this year goes the way everybody hopes it's going to go, he kind of replaces Johnny Walker on the edge. Got a linebacker named Josiah Trotter, was on the Big 12 All-Freshman team at West Virginia, had 90-plus tackles. His dad and his brother are both in the NFL, his dad's not anymore, but was at one point. You mentioned Catalon, and then back to the offense, running back Ahmad Hardy from Louisiana Monroe. One of the nation's leading rushers, and maybe the best player they got out of the portal, honestly.
When you look at Missouri in the defense, just expanding upon that a little bit more, what are your thoughts on where things stand with that group right now, and where can they improve going into this season here?
Yeah, I think it's pass rush is the big key here, and they went out and they got not only Wilson, but they've got Darius Smith, who came from Georgia a year ago, tore his ACL late in fall camp. They really like him. They went out and got a kid from App State named Nate Johnson, a D2 kid from Northwest Missouri named Langdon Kitchen, which that has worked here before with Cody Schrader just a couple years ago. So they're very high on the defensive end group. The linebackers, I think, are going to be good. They brought in a couple transfers, and they've got a young kid named Nick Rodriguez who redshirted last season. Didn't redshirt, played some as a true freshman, but a lot on special teams. But Drinkwood said he had the best spring of anybody. And then they got kind of a bonus in this Diego Pavia lawsuit. Tristan Newsom, who started at linebacker for him last year, got the extra year. He's back. Khalil Jacobs, who got injured in the 5th game of last season, he's back. So they bring back a good mix of experience and new guys. And I think the expectation is the front 7, especially early, hopefully is – so good that it might give the secondary kind of a minute to find its footing.
Last one for you here. Got about 2 minutes. As I mentioned earlier, no spring game for Missouri this year or next year due to stadium construction. It's a growing trend in college football to not have them. Does that actually return in 27, or do you think they're done with them for good?
I hope not. I want spring football to go away entirely. I think it's. I mean, for the coaches, if they get something out of it, that's great. For us, I think it's a complete waste of time. So I would prefer to have those 3 weeks freed up. And I'll say this: like Eli Drinkwitz, he might think more of spring football than I do, but I don't think he thinks a lot more of it. I mean, he's always been very clear. We're not making depth chart decisions. Don't read too much into this. We got a long time till the season. This is just about kids getting better every day. So I hope it doesn't come back, honestly.
Doesn't he know we have to fill out content some kind of way?
Hey, I'll find ways because I've got no desire to just go pretend. What I hate about the way spring football is covered is people act like they know something. We know nothing about it. We don't have to pretend we do.
All right, Gabe Yearman of PowerMizzou.com. Appreciate your time. I'm sure we'll be checking with you as that game gets closer this fall.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right, it is the halftime show coming up next. In case you just woke up, what have you missed in the world of sports? We'll tell you about that next on your Wednesday here on The Game.
seconds. They do have a timeout. Carlisle's going to let him play. Halliburton steps back and hits. Tyrese Halliburton trying to take Cleveland's heart. And it is over. The Indiana Pacers in a Game 2 stunner.
Stunner, to say the least. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. It is time for In Case You Just Woke Up, and that was the call last night on TNT, with the Pacers taking Game 2 over the Cavs, 120-119 in the Eastern Conference semifinals. Tyrese Halliburton becoming the hero yet again for the Pacers in the playoffs with that last-second three-pointer to elevate the Pacers over the Cavs. But I don't know if this is more about, and they're actually debating this on ESPN right now, is this more about the Pacers storming back or the Cavs collapsing? I'm not really sure.
I think this is honestly a little bit of both. I would say the bigger story here is the Pacers going on the road and winning the first 2 games with a buzzer beater in Game 2.
Now going back home with the advantage.
Now going back home with the advantage here. I mean, you're right. I mean, they could easily seal the deal here in the next 2 games with a sweep, which would be stunning because the Cavs have had a great year. They're the 1 seed in the East, and I think it is a little bit of both, like I said, because the Cavs, I mean, this is kind of a surprise after how dominant they looked against the Heat. Yeah.
In the last minute, they had a 7-point lead at one point with a minute to go. They were up by 14, by the way, the Cavs were, to start the fourth quarter. They allowed a rebound off a missed free throw with about 46 seconds left. They caused an offensive foul when they elbowed Naismith of the Pacers, which ended up turning the ball over. They failed to inbound, which at the very last second, which allowed Halliburton to get the ball, go down to the other end, and get fouled to line up for the free throws, which they then allowed him to grab the rebound off the missed free throw to set him up for the winning shot that put them ahead 120-119.
You can't be missing your free throws. I mean, we saw it with the Thunder the other day against the Nuggets in Game 1.
Grab your rebounds. Like if
grab your rebounds.
Don't allow them to grab the rebound off their own missed free throw.
It's just that's the worst thing you could do in basketball is, number one, miss free throws, but not be able to grab your rebound. That's a real problem right there.
Fortunately for Tyrese Halliburton, his spotlight was not stolen this time because his dad was not anywhere inside of the arena. I think they still call it Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, right?
I think they may have. Let me look. Let's see.
Either way,
it's called Rocket Arena.
Oh, it's Rocket Arena. Okay, they shortened it, but still.
Yeah. Honestly, better.
Yeah, that is. It flows off the tongue a little bit better. But of course, his dad last week stole his thunder when he won the game in overtime against the Bucks, and then he's getting in, Giannis's face and saying this is what we do and all that kind of stuff, and embarrassed himself, quite frankly, to where the Pacers were like, hey, you're not going to be allowed to come to any more games the rest of the year. And I think that was the right choice because Halliburton was able to shine on his own last night.
Yeah, I'm glad that nothing interfered with it last night. I'm like, all right, please don't let anyone on the court to ruin this moment.
The other game last night, Warriors over the Timberwolves 99-88 in the Western Conference semifinals. And this is a game the Warriors just kind of controlled all the way through. Minnesota could not hit a three-pointer to save their lives. I believe they started 0 of 16 before they finally hit one in the second half. And Anthony Edwards, who did end up with 23 points, 1 point in the first half. He was very ineffective early on in this game. And again, when your best player, one of the biggest stars in the NBA, is not effective for a half of basketball, you're probably not going to win that game.
Yeah, and you see ESPN talking about it all morning long here. And, yeah, he finished with, 23 points, 22 points, and, went 9 of 22 from the field. But, yeah, I mean, right? I mean, this is your superstar you're talking about. And luckily the Wolves have a pretty good roster top to bottom, but you need your star player to step up, and just not enough in that first half last night.
Yeah, head coach Chris Finch even called him out after the game. It was critical of him, and we'll see if Ant-Man can respond coming up game number 2 tomorrow night to see if the Timberwolves can avoid getting themselves into a 0-2 hole. This news coming out earlier on this morning, an interesting trade between the Steelers and the Cowboys as George Pickens has been dealt to the Cowboys to become Brian Schottenheimer's new project to work with, assuming he's going to be the second wide receiver behind CeeDee Lamb out there, and obviously gives Dak Prescott another weapon to throw with. But I see a lot of Steeler fans not happy about this, but George Pickens, to say the least, and I was in Athens when he was at Georgia, is a problem. Great player, but he can cause a lot of issues internally.
And I guess that just fits right in with the Cowboys and all the, I don't want to say, I guess head cases, just a lot of different people in that building. It starts with Jerry Jones, obviously, but on the football playing, looking at it from a football standpoint, it's a good move. I mean, the Cowboys get better on offense with this. You just, CeeDee Lamb is, a 1,100-yard receiver last year. George Pickens is about a 900-yard receiver. How are you going to split that up? You're not giving CD less targets, I don't think, but
right.
You got to be able to feed George as well. And then for the Steelers, I saw something on ESPN earlier. Is this like the worst Steelers roster under Mike Tomlin?
Well, for one, they don't know who their quarterback is as of right now, and the fact that you're waiting on a 40-year-old injured Aaron Rodgers to decide what he's going to do, to decide your quarterback room, I think speaks volumes to where they're at right now. And again, I think Mike Tomlin is one of the best coaches in the NFL in a very long time, and he's kept that winning streak going of not having a losing season. It almost feels like they're setting up for their first losing season under Mike Tomlin.
It's just like, why are they waiting so long? Like, what, your next best quarterback is Mason Rudolph?
Well, if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come, that's who you got.
Yeah, and that's a real problem. Like, I would have at least drafted someone and go from there, but, man, it's bad. And, at this point, like, what is Aaron waiting on? Like, why are the Steelers continuing to hold out hope that a guy that wasn't even that good last year with the Jets is, he's 41. Like, what are they waiting on here?
He's a 41-year-old man with a bad Achilles that plays like it. And again, you looked at it last year with the Jets, and sure, some of his numbers weren't terrible, but when you actually watch him play, it wasn't good, man. It was ugly.
No, I think it's a dumb decision here by the Steelers to wait it out. Don't disagree with the fact of trading a guy like Pickens, who obviously has caused problems, even though he's a good player on the field. It's just, I just don't know what to expect from the Steelers. I don't think you can say that they're going to be keeping that winning season streak alive. I think this is the year it probably gets snapped.
Saw this news headline. I thought it was pretty funny. Akron football is receiving a multi-year academic progress or a multi-year ban from bowl eligibility, or this year's ban from bowl eligibility, because their academic progress report has dropped to 114, which is below the threshold to allow for them to get into the postseason. Below 930, if you go below 930, you are ineligible for the postseason, and they've been at 914 for the past academic year, so they are not allowed to go to a bowl game, which we saw Akron last year, and we talked about it heading into that game that Robbie Ashford ran all over them in. They might have been the worst team in Group of Five, like legitimately the worst team at FBS. So I don't think they have to worry about getting to a bowl game unless they just drastically have changed their roster in the offseason. But it is funny. They've already gotten ahead of themselves and said, you know what? We're not going to go to a bowl game anyway. Let's go ahead and be below the academic threshold so we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I was about to say, they're not going to a bowl game this year anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I couldn't tell you the last time Akron's been to a bowl game. They just had
Ooh, that's a good question, actually.
They've had rough seasons for years now at this point, and I'm sure it's pretty recent when they made a bowl game, but they've had a lot of losing seasons. And this is just what is going on. What is going on in the the Akron area? Like, is it just not a smart area of people? Like, that's where LeBron's from.
They made the last winning season they had. They lost the MAC championship game and then lost the Boca Raton Bowl in 2017. That was the last time they played in the postseason.
God, I was in high school then, man. Where were you?
I was in my first year at Georgia. So I transferred in for my junior year. So, yeah, it was a long time ago.
Dude, that's crazy. So long ago.
Well, they're going ahead and getting ahead of it and saying,
I don't blame them.
Don't worry about it. We got this. We're not going to be bowl eligible anyway. So we're just going to make ourselves ineligible as it is. So I thought that was pretty funny. But that is, in case you just woke up, we'll come back, wrap up hour number one, and hit your Firehouse Subs text of the hour at 803-404-6100. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry with you on Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri filling in for Terry over the course of the next couple days. Captain Dave producing on the other side of the glass. We appreciate everybody checking us out on the Game TV, sponsored by Shepherd's Glass and powered by our friends over at Integrated Media. You can also listen to us on the 107.5 Game app. Just go to your App Store, the Google Play Store, and download it and take us with you wherever you go. It is time for our Firehouse Subs text of the hour, 803-404-6100. Nameless texter, as I mentioned there, Akron has already academically made themselves bowl ineligible for this upcoming year, has informed me that in the history of Akron Zips football, they have only been to 3 bowl games. No, 4 bowl games.
Oh.
The 1968 Grantland Rice Bowl, where they lost to Appalachian State, which that would be FCS. So that was before they even made the transition up to FBS. So since joining FBS, whatever year that was, they've only been to 3 bowl games. They lost the Motor City Bowl to Memphis in 2005. They defeated Utah State in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl in 2015. And then, as I mentioned, they lost to Louisiana Tech in the Boca Raton Bowl back in 2017.
The first one's puzzling. The one from 1968. What was the name of it again?
Grantland Rice Bowl. So, again, that was at that point known as Division I AA.
Yes.
Now known as FCS. Because, again, App State was a powerhouse in that before jumping up to FBS, maybe about 10 years ago, I guess it's been now. Let me see if I can do some research on the Grantland Rice Bowl.
Yeah, that's
I'm intrigued.
Yeah, but 3 bowl games in their history. I mean, look, Akron, as we know, is not some powerhouse program, obviously, but I mean, that's rough, man. I mean, that's got to be like one of the lowest totals for any FBS program out there.
Oh, this was actually Division II. Okay. Not FCS.
Wow. Okay. That makes a lot more sense.
Was an annual, I'm reading from Wikipedia because Wikipedia's right about everything. Was an annual college football bowl game held from 1964 through 77. The game, did they play in the last one? They played, no, 68. Okay. So the game originated as a college divisional regional final, then became a playoff game in Division II. It was named after Grantland Rice, who was a sports writer in the 1920s from Tennessee. Which is where the game was originally played. And so they played the last one in Tennessee, actually. It went to Baton Rouge, Fargo, North Dakota, and Anniston, Alabama before it was over with. But, yeah, that was a Division II regional final game in 1968. They lost 33-13 to Louisiana Tech.
The more you know.
I guess so.
Wow. And what'd you say before?
Okay, originally it said App State.
Yeah.
But looking up the results, it says Louisiana Tech.
And isn't Tech, didn't you say in 17 they played Tech?
Yes.
Wow. So full circle.
It looks like they've bookended their bowls up to this point with Louisiana Tech. And apparently the academic issues have been a consistent reason or a consistent thing. Because I'm looking here on just Google, and it says they've not been to a bowl game since 2017 due to academics performance issues. So it doesn't sound like it's the first time this has cropped up. But again, they've not been good enough to even get to a bowl game since then.
Yeah, they've been really, really bad. Like not even close to making a bowl game. I mean, it's been a lot of double-digit loss seasons. It's rough.
Yeah. So again, we saw them last year here, and it was very obvious how bad they were.
Yeah, I mean, it was close for a little bit, but I mean, it ended up being 50-7.
And of course, we in our job here try and position, the challenge that a team like that presents. Like, hey, you never know, crazy things can happen. And in researching Akron football, I couldn't even find. That's the funny thing because we always, and again, we're doing these, interviews with people from around the country talking about the respective teams that they cover. I couldn't find anyone that covered Akron football last year, to actually come on and talk about them because I guess nobody cares that much.
No, I mean, I'm just trying to think. Last year, I mean, I had sent one of the interns to the Joe Moorhead press conference after, and I think he only gave like an opening statement because I don't think they had any reporters there. So, I mean, look, it's they went 4-8 last year, so it's not like they were that far off, but my goodness, I mean, rough.
I did appreciate one thing from Joe Moorhead, and that was leading up to the game because, look, every coach at whatever level, no matter how big of an underdogs you are, we'll say, hey, we're going to go out there and give it our best shot, and you never know. And like Joe Moorhead said something to the effect of like, look, we know why we're playing this game. It's so that the equestrian team can buy saddles. It's so that the diving team can buy new swimsuits or whatever it may be. Like, they knew it was a pay game. And they got paid, I don't know, $1.5 million, $2 million or whatever to come down here and get beat up 50-7.
They're doing just fine.
They took their check and went home.
Yeah, they are doing just fine. And I'm sure they have a few more of those types of games coming up this year. Let's see. They go to Nebraska.
Yeah, pay game.
Not really a ton, honestly. I mean, UAB, Wyoming, Duquesne. I mean, those really aren't. I think Nebraska's really like their big pay game, I would imagine.
Yeah, that seems to be the only one there. Because Wyoming, that's Mountain West. And
they're hosting Wyoming and Duquesne.
Yeah.
So they go to UAB, but is UAB's not gonna pay them?
Yeah, I don't think UAB is gonna be shelling out too much money to take on Akron. They may win the game. We'll see.
Maybe not too many horse saddles this year, but maybe more textbooks would be.
Maybe so.
Good.
Yeah, we'll see what Nebraska shells out to see them go out there.
Yeah, that should be the gift. No money, just textbooks, educational stuff to really help them get over the edge.
Do you remember when Joe Moorhead was at Mississippi State and said something effective, you're going to have to drag me out of here in a pine box?
I don't. Wow.
No, you don't remember that?
No. When was this?
Because remember, he was the OC at Penn State.
Yeah, that's right.
Before he came down here. And, I think his way of doing things clashed with the folks out there in Starkville.
Oh, of course.
There was a lot of pushback, and he said something effective. Yeah, you're going to have to drag me out of here in a pine box if you want me to leave Starkville. He didn't leave in a pine box. They got him out there pretty quick.
What is a pine box?
Like, you're going to have to, my dead body.
Yeah, I mean,
basically.
yeah.
So
Jeez.
that's a quote that always sticks out to me
That's a good one.
when I hear Joe Moorhead's name. But yeah, hey, best of luck. And unfortunately, no matter how good you are, you're not going to be going to a bowl game this year.
Yeah, probably not. So
that'll do it for hour number one. Coming up next in hour number two, of course, it is football, and more football. We'll get into what Coach Beamer had to say at the Welcome Home event last night. And also, let's listen to our conversation with Connor, what was his name? Mardian from
Virginia Tech guy.
Yeah, Virginia Tech guy from Hokies on SI, coming up at 1:15 here on the halftime show on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry filling in for Terry over the next couple days, and Captain Dave producing on the other side of the glass. It is time for football, and more football in the 1 o'clock hour. And we'll go out to last night and the welcome home event out in Aiken with Coach Beamer. You were out the one in Somerville on Monday. Mondays are running together here. So we did hear a lot of interesting things from Beamer because it had been a few weeks since we last heard from him. So just kind of following up on a couple things. We hit the what he said about Faison and legal action in the last hour there. But, Dave, I want to start off here, if we can, with cut number 8. This is Coach Beamer talking about his relationship with new athletic director Jeremiah Donati, who's been on the job, obviously, since January. And obviously getting to know him and obviously doing what's best for this football program. Here's what Coach Beamer had to say about handling the expectations being placed upon him with new athletic director.
Yeah, it doesn't feel a lot different. I think it's just maybe just the newness of having a new boss and not talking to Coach Tanner regularly like I used to, and talking to Jeremiah more, and even Jeff Crane. Jeff wasn't here last year at this time. He didn't come until the summertime. So you talk about my two immediate bosses are brand new, so that feels different, but it's certainly a good thing as well. But I think every year you never feel like you're settled or I got this under control, because every year is just so new, roster and personnel and whatnot, and every year is truly starting over. So I've got more of more information to look back on, if you will, that, okay, we did this year 3, it's good. We did this year 4 differently. It was better. Let's definitely do this year 5. I think there's more experiences. So when you go through those experiences, that helps you have a little bit better handle on things, but it's still a ton of unexpected. But to answer your question, I think just the new, and then there's expectations. But I mean, there were expectations in 23, coming off the season we had in 22. Now it's a little bit different. You're hearing all these draft projections for next year and playoff projections and all that. That's a little bit different, but we've got to certainly handle that better than we did a couple years ago, for sure.
And obviously it's good when you have high expectations placed on you, because that means you've done something to warrant that. And certainly the expectation is very high for the team that was on the bubble of the college football playoff a year ago and won 9 games in the regular season. But I brought this up earlier. I think behind only Dawn Staley, Coach Beamer's sitting in a pretty good spot, because you're not, the football coach. People are saying, oh, hey, new AD, better worry, look over your shoulder. You might be losing your job here. That's not the guy that hired you. Like, no, Jeremiah Donati's inheriting a very good football program that's obviously turning in the right direction.
Yeah, like there's no conversation to be had about, what's Shane Beamer's status for the future. Like, number one, like the season they had last year was a huge step in the right direction. Going 9-4 was a big deal, and then getting the contract extension, that only adds to the fact that he's not going anywhere anytime soon. And you hope with the contract it means that he's being rewarded for the fact he had a good year last year, but they're planning on him leading South Carolina to not just another great year, but to get into the college football playoff and potentially go compete for a national championship at that point. So I think the relationship between him and Donati has been very good so far from what we understand here, and that's good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, Donati's got a lot on his plate, obviously, as we're on the cusp of revenue sharing, and we have stadium construction project that's going to be going on once we get into the football offseason. Countless other things. Again, you're got a very close eye on men's basketball and what's going to happen year number 4 with Lamont Paris. I'm sure he's paying a lot of attention to baseball right now and what's going on there. So the fact that your biggest entity, your biggest moneymaker is not an issue right now, probably not a sigh of relief for Jeremiah Donati.
Yeah, it makes life a lot easier when you have the football program where it is. Now, if he came in last year and they were coming off the 5-7 season, maybe it's a different discussion. But things are good right now from a football standpoint. And as for the rest of the sports, softball's good, women's basketball is great, and the other two big money makers here, men's basketball and baseball, that's really where his priorities need to be in terms of figuring out, okay, how are we getting this turned around? And obviously we've had the basketball offseason now with the transfer portal and stuff. Baseball's got a big summer ahead of them and with some big decisions to make, and Donati's got to be at the forefront of it.
Yeah, we did actually get his first firing the other day, where he did remove the beach volleyball coach. So that is the first move that he's made so far as athletic director in terms of replacing a head coach.
Yeah, and he also had the volleyball coach hire last month. So, yeah, staying with the beach volleyball here. And, of course, it came on a day where everyone's thinking, all right, all the rumors are swirling around. You know, Paul Mainieri, he's going to be on his way out, and something's coming in the morning, and nothing came. And then, of course, just to add injury to insult, the beach volleyball coach gets fired. So, but yeah, I mean, look, Jeremiah, I think the big moves are going to come in due time. It's just, most sports are in a pretty good spot right now. And like he said at his introductory press conference, he's coming into a pretty good situation here where he doesn't have to necessarily change the whole complexion of everything. It's just men's basketball and baseball, a lot to unpack there.
Well, speaking of sports that are a pretty good place right now, football is definitely at the top of that list, right behind women's basketball. And a big reason for that is obviously the Norris Sellers and his hype going in to this offseason is this upcoming season is one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC and hopefully all of college football. Cut number 10 here, Dave. This is Coach Beamer last night at the Welcome Home event talking about Sellers and his ability to handle these lofty expectations being placed on him this year.
I think he's some guys I would worry about. He's as level-headed and grounded. I mean, it's funny. I was telling somebody the other day, it's college athletics. 2025, he went with me to Florence for the Gamecock Club event, and he obviously, he's at the Gamecock Club event, he's in Florence, it's his hometown, part of revenue sharing and the money they're able to get from NIL is being able to do events like he did in Florence. So he's over there in Florence for that. But then the very next day, he's texting me, can I reach out to the academic people because he missed a class that the professor didn't excuse him to be at the event in Florence. And I'm like, this ain't college football 2025. I got the player signing autographs at an event for NIL, but he's also got a professor that he missed a class. And then, he's such a great young man. Even yesterday, he's doing an internship this summer. And he texted me yesterday, hey, can you send me basically the schedule for the summer? Because the place that I'm doing the internship for, they need like the dates and the times, and I'm going to be available and things like that as well. So no, he's as grounded as can be, and it's cool to see. But I've talked to him, or not necessarily specifically to him, but some of the other guys, that all that stuff's great. But the best thing you can do is go play good football this upcoming fall, no matter who it is. And we'll have those conversations even more so as we get closer to the season.
And it doesn't surprise anyone, I think, the fact that the fame and obviously the money that he now makes being a higher profile quarterback hasn't really changed. Norris Sellers seems like the same guy. You obviously deal with him in person more than most of us do, and you wouldn't really know it from looking at it or talking to him that he's thought to be one of the better quarterbacks in college football this year. Just kind of the way that he carries himself in a very nonchalant kind of way.
Yeah, I mean, he's just very cool and calm and collected and poised, and again, we're seeing it brought up so much now. I mean, wait till the season starts and when things really heat up. Like if he has a great beginning to the year, the Heisman talk is going to heat up, and he's going to continue to be asked questions about it and stuff. And who knows what happens behind the scenes, but when he's in front of the camera and stuff, and we get to see him and stuff, he's he does it. The moment's not too big for him, and that's the big thing with a guy like LaNorris is he doesn't give you a whole lot, but he just goes about things the right way to where, like Shane said, like if it was another guy, maybe it would affect them.
Well, and it kind of translates over to what you see on the field as well, where again he's just calm under pressure, and there was no moment last year that really seemed too big for him. In fact, in one of the biggest moments of the entire year when he had to go score that big touchdown against Clemson, he did it. Now, yeah, there was a lot of breakdown on that play, and he had to kind of improvise and make the play himself. But again, pressure coming in his face and a very talented Clemson defense, and he didn't panic. Went out there, made the play, and obviously it's one that's going to live on for a very long time in the history of Gamecock football. But again, I think it just kind of speaks volumes to the kind of guy that he is. And like Beamer said, I don't think he should have any problem with handling those expectations placed on him.
Yeah, great players make great plays, and I'm very interested to see how things look with Mike Shula. The bowl game obviously was a very small sample size and spring game and all that, but I mean, look, it's not just Sellers we got to worry about in terms of the offense. It's how's the line going to look? How are the receivers going to look? How's the run game going to look? But Sellers, anytime you have a quarterback like him out there, doesn't matter the game, who you're playing, what the record is, you've always got a chance with him at under center.
And that's a calming sense. And we'll get into a little bit later on this hour and kind of look at other teams around the SEC and how they feel about their quarterback situation when you know you have that guy. And again, even if your offensive line isn't great, you know you can get out of trouble. Even if, you know, you don't have the most elite group of receivers and stuff like that, he can make things happen with tight ends or running backs and all those kind of things, you know, as well. Now, I think we feel better about the wide receiver room than we did a season ago, but you have a sense that Lenore Sellers can put this offense on his back and carry it if he needs to. And again, hopefully he doesn't have to. Everybody else is doing their job around him, but we've seen it on more than one occasion where Sellers has done the heavy lifting and done just fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, he's taken a lot of the weight on his shoulders, and we saw that last year in the Clemson game. The Clemson game is the perfect example of a guy that, I mean, he scored 2 rushing touchdowns in that game. Made a lot of plays that we talk about Houdini. That was him in that game, and it's going to have to probably be again this year to some extent. But you hope it's like not as big of a deal as it was last year. Of like, okay, he's got to do all the heavy lifting. Let's have the other guys on this team help him out a little bit.
Yeah, and again, he's on the short list for Heisman. He's being projected by a lot of people as a first-round draft pick coming up here in next year's 2026 draft. And look, you can't ignore this stuff today because it's everywhere. You know, you can say I don't pay attention to the outside noise, and okay, for Paul Mainieri,
that's easier said than done.
What is he? Is he 67?
Yep, 67.
Yeah, for a 67-year-old man, okay, sure, I can buy that to a degree. But when we're talking about a 19, 20-year-old kid, yeah, I don't buy that because we all know how connected we are to social media and phones and all that kind of stuff, and he knows what's being said about him. And again, I feel like he's handling it well.
He downplays it, man. He doesn't let it affect him. And he's done such a great job of it to where it's like, it's annoying for like media because it's like you want like the cool sound bites and stuff, but like I can respect it that he does not let it get to his head and it becomes all about him and stuff. Like it's still about the team and what they got to do this year.
Coming up next, we're going to let you hear our conversation this morning with Connor Mardian from Hokies on SI, talking all things Virginia Tech as we're 116 days away from the Gamecocks and the Hokies. Kicking things off at Mercedes-Benz Stadium to get the 2025 season underway. Real quick, though, I want to remind you Gamecock baseball back in action coming up tomorrow. First pitch against Auburn at 7 o'clock. Pregame coverage starting at 6:45. You can listen to on 107.5 The Game here in Columbia and 100.3 The Game out in Myrtle Beach. Our conversation with Connor Mardian of Hokies on SI coming up next on the Halftime Show here on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri hanging out with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Captain A producing on the other side of the glass. Appreciate Connor from All Hokies on SI for giving up his time a little bit earlier on today and giving us the insight into what the first opponent for South Carolina is going to look like coming up on August 31st, 116 days from now. We'll be talking with Charlie Potter of Bama Online coming up at 2:30 to get some insight into the Tide as they move away from spring practice as well. One thing that was interesting there, talking to, Connor about the Hokies was Kyron Drones going into another year as a starter. Not somebody that's had a lot of production so far. The offense struggled a lot last year, as he talked about, and they're hoping Philip Montgomery can come in and kind of get the most out of him. So you would definitely put them on the lower end, especially in the ACC, of teams with confidence when it comes to what their quarterback situation is.
I would say so. You look at last year and his stats. He threw for about 1,500 yards, 10 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. In the ACC, that's probably at the bottom of the totem pole, and you want to increase that, and you hope by having a new offensive coordinator, new system, you can get the most out of him, like you said.
And kind of transitioning this back to the SEC, Antonio Morales of The Athletic put out his list the other day of all the Power 4 schools and kind of where they stand when it comes to quarterback situations as we head into the summer and get closer to the start of the season. And it feels like for the most part, just about every SEC school knows who their starter was going to be, but that doesn't necessarily translate to feeling confident a lot. And look, Carolina's been there before plenty of times. You may know who that starter is. That doesn't mean that you feel like they're going to be able to lead you to anything great once the season does get here. And again, we're going to talk about this with Charlie Potter coming up, in about an hour's time. But Alabama, kind of right at the top of the list of a team that seems to have their starter figured out, but you don't really know how good he's going to be with Ty Simpson, who's been on campus for a couple years, but hasn't done a whole lot yet.
And they have a couple of quarterbacks there, but you'd like to see Ty be the guy since he's been there for a little bit now. And, Jalen Miller was your quarterback the last few seasons here, but he's gone now. He's with the Seahawks. And so you're having to replace a very big void by a player that is a big dual threat quarterback. Now, how does that change the offense going into this year? And we'll talk to Charlie about that since he does a great job over with Bama Online with On3. But it's a big challenge to fill that quarterback spot since this is going to be Kalen DeBoer's second year at Alabama, and the results have to be better after last year.
Yeah, and it seems like he's kind of in that starter coming out of spring kind of role that Sellers was in, last year, but, you look at Austin Mack, who transferred over from Washington, and Keelan Russell, who are also in competition with him in that quarterback room, and it does seem like Ty Simpson's going to win out at the end of the day, but I don't think it's going to be this long leash necessarily of, hey, we're going to give him a lot of runway. I think if you've seen the first signs of trouble with Ty Simpson, I don't think they would hesitate to move over to an Austin Mack or a Keelan Russell if they felt like they needed to.
I think so, and I think the last thing you kind of don't want as an SEC team, let alone any team in college football, is consistently having to change the quarterback position. It's happened at Alabama a few times, actually, surprisingly, even going back to Nick Saban's tenure there with the Crimson Tide for years. But the revolving door of quarterbacks never really leads to anything good, obviously, until you find your guy. You want one consistent quarterback, but if that's not the case, you're going to have to shuffle things around a little bit, and every quarterback's different. Some quarterbacks have a better arm, some are more mobile. You're going to have a lot to figure out there, but hopefully for Alabama, they can kind of figure out who their one guy is going to be.
Their in-state rival Auburn also has some questions when it comes to their quarterback. We, of course, know Jackson Arnold did not fare too well in his one season as a starter at Oklahoma. A lot of factors to that. Their offensive line was terrible, didn't have a lot of help around him on offense. So the prevailing thought is that, well, he just wasn't in a good situation there. You get him to Auburn, he's, with Hugh Freeze and going to have more talent around him to be able to be successful. But if I'm an Auburn fan, I don't know that for sure until I actually see it on display. Because, again, I saw last year, and again, when he didn't have help around him, he struggled. So I can't say I'm going to have the most confidence going into this fall with Jackson Arnold as my quarterback until I see otherwise.
And Auburn's done a pretty good job in recruiting in that state and bringing a lot of guys in, and hopefully that will help a Jackson Arnold if he starts. But let's also not forget, they have a 5-star quarterback that they brought in for January, Deuce Knight. He's a dual threat. he comes from George County High, and there he accumulated more than 7,000 yards passing, 56 touchdowns, and a lot of yards on the ground too. So I'm sure he's going to be right in the mix for that job at quarterback, and that's a spot that they've definitely struggled at over the last few years. You go back to Peyton Thorne last year, and trying to remember the other guy's name, Hank Brown. Is that
Hank Brown? Yeah, he started like one game and then kind of flamed out, I think.
Yeah, and I mean that was a mess there. So we'll see if Knight can potentially be in the mix. But you brought in Jackson Arnold to be the starter, obviously.
I mentioned earlier Georgia. Gunnar Stockton seems to have the job on lock as of right now. Again, you've seen roughly about a game and a half sample size out of him. And look, I don't put the loss in the Sugar Bowl on him because there was a lot of other factors, drops by the wide receivers, those kind of things. But from what I've heard coming out of practice, I don't know if it's a slam dunk that he's definitely going to be the guy to lead this team to the same heights they've had over the past couple years. So something to keep an eye on, at least for Georgia, in terms of what's happening with the quarterback situation there.
It's definitely interesting because Georgia's in that unique spot where they lost Carson Beck after last season with the injury and whatnot, and now he's at Miami. And then you have the very small sample size of Gunnar playing in the bowl game or playoff game, and it wasn't anything like wowing, of course. Like, could it be better? Yeah, sure. And hopefully over a full season, if he does start, you get to see what kind of player he really is. But Georgia's going into this year kind of like, I think they're just kind of in that same boat as Alabama, don't you think?
Yeah, kind of so. And again, Ty Simpson and Gunnar Stockton can end up being the two best quarterbacks in the SEC. But I think you still just need to see a bigger sample size out of those guys to know for sure what exactly that is going to end up looking like with those guys.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, I mean, there's a lot of other teams in this conference that are kind of in that same boat, to be honest.
Well, and Tennessee is perhaps the biggest one because, again, they felt like they were okay at quarterback. Yes, they wanted to see Nico take a bigger step forward in year two as a starter, but then they get blindsided by this whole situation that went down a couple weeks ago to now Nico's at UCLA. Joey Aguilar, who was at UCLA, is now at Tennessee in a quasi-trade of all things, and it seems like he's going to be the starter as of right now. Can he transition from App State to the SEC? We'll see. Again, he was at UCLA and was thought of pretty highly coming out of App State, but again, it's a different animal coming to the SEC, and we'll see if he can make that transition.
And maybe he can be what Nico kind of lacked last year as the quarterback for Tennessee. I mean, I feel like so much of last year was kind of on him compared to the system that Tennessee was running, because Hendon Hooker had no problem running that offense so efficiently 2 years ago. But now it's at a point where it's like Nico was your guy. He's not there. You get Joey Aguilar, who, last year at App State, 3,000 yards through the air, 23 touchdowns, and 14 picks. Get those interceptions down. But I think a guy like him, a veteran that is, been in college football for a while here, albeit at the group of 5 level, I think Josh Heupel can do some really good things with him leading that offense.
Again, I'll throw this out there. I know his upside's insanely high, and he could be the number 1 pick in the draft next year. We still don't know a lot about Arch Manning. I know a good bit. We've seen him start against lesser competition, but I want to see, and look, they start off the season against Ohio State. We're going to get the best
at the Horseshoe
first game sample size of a kid that's highly thought of right out of the gate. So I'm excited to see what he does. But again, you have to explore the possibility that maybe he's not as good as people think he is. That is something that could happen.
I'm waiting to put judgment on this until I see about like a few weeks of him starting regularly, because that first game at Ohio State, that's going to be tough regardless of who's under center. Like, even if it was Quinn Ewers, like, it's still going to be tough. And for a guy that is making, he started games for Texas because Quinn has been banged up in the past, but it's nothing on the level of going on the road week 1. It's going to be probably like 95 degrees outside. It's going to be tough, but as the year wears on, you'll kind of get to see what this guy's really about. Then you get into SEC play. We'll know for sure if he's the real deal or not by that point.
Yeah, definitely so. A lot of headlines around quarterbacks coming up here in 2025 in the SEC. And again, I think everybody here in Carolina feels pretty confident in what they have when it comes to LaNorris Sellers. We'll come back and wrap up hour number 2. Hit your Firehouse Subs text of the hour, 803-404-6100. That's coming up next. It's the Halftime Show. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry, David Ayer on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyrad, Jack Veltri, David Ayer with you on your Wednesday here on the game. It is time for the Firehouse Subs text of the hour at 803-404-6100. Gary says, I feel the same way about DJ Lagway in reference to Arch. Small sample size against lesser competition with great upside. DJ, in my opinion, is just more athletic. I think we saw a lot more from Lagway last year. He started a good handful of games. He unfortunately got hurt towards the end of the season, and people forget this. That Georgia game, when he was in, because he got, I think it was the hip injury, like in the second quarter, they were winning that game. And Georgia barely escaped by the skin of their teeth. If Lagway plays that whole game, they probably win.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the guy who came in after, I'm trying to remember the situation.
They ended up getting down to their third string, I want to say.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Game.
And I mean, because Graham Mertz was the starter.
And he, because they had been trading off early in the year, if I remember.
Then he had a season-ending injury.
Then he got hurt, so it eventually turned over to Lagway.
And then they had to go to the third
full
string.
Time. What was that guy's name? I feel like he was like from Harvard or something like that.
Yeah, it was
Aiden Warner.
Yeah.
Let's see. He was. Let's see here. Yeah, if he came into that Georgia game, went 7 of 22 and threw an interception.
Yeah, and I mean, Lagway didn't even have a chance to do. I mean, he threw a touchdown pass in that game, but I mean, he was 2 of 6.
He got hurt before. He really had a chance to do a lot of damage in that game. And again, if he stays in that game, that they definitely probably win. But he ended up playing a good deal last year to where, and look, he's being put on short list for Heisman Trophy as well. And a lot of people are comparing him and Lenore Sellers because they're both athletic type of guys. But yeah, he played in almost every single game last year,
but
didn't really start starting until the end of the year.
Yeah, the real sample size was you had Samford, and then the final month of the year, pretty much, like from LSU on. I mean, he started basically every game. So
and again, he led them to big wins over LSU and Ole Miss. And remember this. We had written Florida off. We left Florida for dead, especially after they started off the season with the losses to Miami, the losses to A&M. We thought, okay, Billy Napier's going to get fired before the season's over. Their schedule looked impossible. And again, they go out there and pull 2 of the bigger upsets in the SEC over LSU and Ole Miss in consecutive weeks.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking, I think it was like Mississippi State week for Florida. If they lost that game, I think Billy Napier just gets left on the tarmac. And, of course, they win that game, and then they pull it together enough to win enough games to where it's like, all right, Billy's job is saved for another year. You have a really good quarterback coming back for his first full season under center, and now you go. I mean, this could be a competitive team, but again, the schedule remains really, really tough, and that's going to be the biggest thing that might keep them from being where they want to be.
Again, you're playing the exact same opponents, just flipped this time. And I think they also start off with Miami again.
And it's in Coral Gables.
No, it's not. It doesn't start off the season. That is week number 4.
Oh, wow.
So they get Long Island, South Florida, and then Miami in week number 4, and of course Florida State at the end of the year. But much like South Carolina, you're playing 10 of the same opponents from a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, the schedule is going to be tough, but I think if you're Florida, you're feeling good about where things are at. But again, if they have a rough year like we expected them to last year, does it get right back to Billy being fired, or is it like where do you go?
You are always walking a thin line in Gainesville, Florida, because the expectations are so high.
Yeah,
and again, they're feeling good right now, but again, they should be able to handle Long Island and South Florida. But if they lose on the road at LSU by 20 points. Yeah. Then it'll start up again.
And I think they finally have gotten a new president and stuff. At least,
yes, they did. After God, how long were they without one?
I mean, we were talking about this football season, so it's
crazy.
It's insane. So,
of course, we don't get Florida for the second straight year because of the way the SC schedule is working. But I feel like we're missing out on a very good quarterback battle between Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway, because again, they get compared a lot. And, very similar styles of play. And I think that'd just be a fun game to watch.
SEC championship game. Let's see.
Not
it.
impossible.
Let's
Not
see.
impossible.
Maybe someday if the SEC actually goes with that. What was the format that they were thinking about? The tournament style thing and
Yeah, which look, I'm in favor of because I don't see the point in the top 2 teams playing when you know they're going to be in anyway.
Exactly.
But essentially, and this kind of goes along with if there are guaranteed spots in the college football playoff,
Yeah.
where instead of 1 versus 2 playing each other, you have like 4 versus 5 in the conference standings playing for a spot in the playoff.
I'd love that. I just think it makes a lot more sense since, look, the SEC doesn't have, outside of the conference champion, doesn't have guaranteed spots, but most likely, as long as the top 2 teams are not with like 3 or 4 losses, they're going to get in. So that's where I think you need to have this little format that you're referring to here.
Yeah, which I feel like every single week there's another meeting or something about formatting, and hey, nothing came to a decision yet. So I think we're going to move to that by 2026.
We're going to move in a different direction from this because it just, if we're thinking this and it makes sense, you can best believe the people that are paid to make these decisions are probably thinking about the same thing and like, how can we get more teams into the playoff here?
Well, they're really thinking about how can you make more money.
Oh, obviously money, but you want, getting more teams in means you get more money, and by virtue, moving further in the playoff with the SEC teams moving in there, I mean, the money is going to add up.
Yeah, well, again, and money drives everything in the sport. We know that for sure. And I would think we'd know the future format before this year starts, but like the phase-on thing when it comes to his eligibility, I guess you can't be 100% sure.
No, you definitely can't be, but I'm excited to see what happens with the future of college football to some extent. It's just there's so much change, but something like this I think would be good.
Yeah, appreciate the text again, 803-404-6100. Well, one more before we get out of here coming up at 2:45. But coming up next, it is What is Trending at 2's hit the headlines of the day as the halftime show rolls along. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher filling in for Terry Ford and David Ayer along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Feltry filling in for Terry Ford for the next couple of days. And David Ayer producing on the other side of the glass. It is time for what's trending at 2 here on your Wednesday. We'll start off with a little bit of baseball real quick here. Coach Mainieri talking to the media yesterday, as of course the team will be on the road to Auburn tomorrow night for the series against the Tigers, which, Dave, you have been telling me that the weather's not looking all that great out there in Auburn, Alabama, to get all 3 of these games in.
Not at all. I mean, if they did 2 tomorrow, they could probably get them in. But Friday evening, 80% chance of rain, game scheduled for 7 o'clock. Saturday, 70% chance of rain all day, so that's scheduled for 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Aren't you glad you're not going?
I am, but at the same time, I still have to cover these games. And
But there's a difference between covering it from home and being there.
Yeah, but like, for instance, it's Mother's Day weekend, right?
That is true.
I'm thinking about going. I mean, I'm going home at some point this weekend, but it greatly depends on what's the deal with baseball coverage here. What's the deal with softball?
I don't think they can push games to Sunday, right?
No, you have to play in the 3-day window, and then the last weekend, I think, if there's tiebreakers or something.
If it's necessary to break a tie, they can.
But I mean, they got to fit it in a 3-day. That's why you saw this past weekend.
Yeah,
them waiting till 10 at night to start game 1 against Florida. So, I mean, look, it's not ideal. And Captain, I hope you're wrong that they are. I hope they just play all 3 games in 3 days. Heck, honestly, I'd be cool if they just moved one of these games up to like 1 o'clock or something, and I just have to cover that, and we'll see. I don't know. No doubleheaders though.
No news out of that as of right now, but we'll see if anything changes as we get closer to those games again, starting tomorrow night out there in Auburn. Of course, a lot of conversation around Coach Mainieri coming away from a dismal weekend against Florida, and the questions of, okay, is he going to be the head coach next year, whether it by removing him or him on his own volition deciding he doesn't want to do this anymore. And he doubled down yesterday saying, cut number 2 here, Dave, I am the coach here at South Carolina.
So what situation? I mean, I'm the coach at South Carolina. Nobody has told me anything different or implied anything different. And I'm totally committed to being here, and I want to see this thing get on the tracks in the right way. And I've been through this before. My first year at LSU was, equally as difficult. And Terry and I went out. We recruited a great class that first year while we were, grinning and bearing it through the first year. And the next year, started slow. We took a while to gel. And then we ended up winning the West and going to Omaha, as a national seed. And the next year we won the national championship. I'm not guaranteeing that's going to happen, but I'm not, look, this season's been hard for everybody. I thought we would do better, and then we had some unfortunate injuries. The Friday night starter that we planned on all fall and all winter that never threw a pitch for us. Our starting catcher broke his thumb the second inning of the first game. He gutted it out and played through probably 15 or 20 games. I don't remember how many it was, Kent, but Kent could probably tell you. North Carolina, I think, was the last game he played, right? And then the reason we had to take him out was he tore a labrum in his hip. He couldn't play after that. We never really had our second baseman the whole year. I mean, Naraki tried to play, but he wasn't, he was a shell of what we thought he was going to be because he had these knee issues. He's going next week to have surgery on it, on the one knee, and then he'll have to decide if he wants to have the surgery on the second knee as well. We thought he'd be a 10 to 15 homer guy. Look, I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying these are the facts.
And again, kind of doubling you down on the pressure that's been put on this week in terms of the future of this program. And he listed off some things there that have obviously been setbacks for the team this year, which, is understandable, but that's also not an excuse because nobody thought it was going to be this bad as we close in on the end of his first year here at South Carolina. Again, a program that historically at least finds their way to win 10 games in conference play. That's looking very unlikely they're going to be able to do that this year, which is why so many people are quick to push in the direction of, hey, maybe we need to do something else with this team going forward. But as he said once again, that's not going to be happening anytime soon.
I mean, we're talking about a team that not even 10 wins. We're talking about a team that might break the program record for worst SEC conference record ever. Like 8-22 was South Carolina's record in 2019, and that's a really hard mark to beat. And for Carolina to not tie, I mean, to tie it, it'd be 3-3, but to go 4-2, you're avoiding it, and you're finishing with 9 wins in conference play. But I mean, still, either however you want to put it, I mean, it's been a rough year for this program, and I understand the frustrations of many. And I've been honest too that like maybe change does need to happen, but it's not realistic, I don't think, to fire Mainieri when you have to pay the buyout. That's looming over, as well as the revenue sharing and all that too.
And that's what we talked about on Monday coming off the weekend, that the most likely thing that could have happened would be Mainieri saying, you know what, I bit off too much here. This is not the game that I left a couple years ago. I'm going to walk away to where you don't have to pay those buyouts. Obviously, that's not going to happen now. So, yes, you still have Mainieri at least for another year. And again, if they're 5-19 at this point next year in conference play, we'll have a different conversation. But as of right now, he's not going anywhere.
And again, I said the other day, that came straight from him. You know, we have not heard, at least publicly at least, from Jeremiah Donati on the situation yet, which I would love to hear what he has to say about the program and where it's at, much like how he came on here talking about men's basketball and what needs to change to improve that program. You know, I think they're going to work to get this thing right. I mean, we'll see what the NIL budget looks like for the summer here, because they obviously need to hit on recruiting and whatnot. And then there's also just the possibility of, do you just make staff changes in general? Because, I mean, I'm looking at it today, like the pitching ERA has been awful. The hitting has taken big steps back. There's a lot of fundamental issues with this program right now. And if you aren't getting rid of Paul Mainieri, you got to figure out, okay, where else are we going to make changes to improve for next season?
Always appreciate your thoughts as well on the Love Chevrolet phone lines, 803-404-6100. James wants to talk about baseball. James, appreciate your call. What's on your mind?
Hey, guys. I hope your guys are having a great day today. My question is, I know that Paul Mainieri, how are people expecting him to just turn it around in 1 year? He just got to the program and be able to try to decipher what's been going on with it and get it together. Why are people's expectations were for him to turn it around in 1 year? I don't understand that.
Yeah, appreciate the call there, James, 803-404-6100. And that is a fair question to ask, because it is the first year that he's been here. But we also have to remember this was a team that for the prior 2 seasons was in a regional, made it to a Super 2 years ago. And the knock on Coach Kingston was that he was good but not good enough, right? Nobody felt that he was getting this program to where they thought it should be based on the talent level that they had and all that kind of stuff, which is why they made the decision to move on from him after, the Raleigh Regional a season ago. So, yeah, and Mainieri even admitted it yesterday or the day before, whenever it was, talking to you guys, that, hey, maybe I put a target on my back by saying this is going to be a 1-year turnaround, which he did say, like in his opening press conference. Maybe that was a little bit too lofty, but nobody expected it to be this bad, which is why people are so upset.
And I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, look, he came in here talking about how he's got a 1-year plan to get this thing right and that he won't accept mediocrity and this is going to be a winning year and all that stuff. And I don't blame him for saying that, because, again, he said that's what you have to say, because you have a lot of guys coming in from the transfer portal that are here for 1 year and that's it. And so I can understand it from that standpoint. But then you also have a fan base that is hungry to get to Omaha, and they take that and they're like, all right, I'm sold. Like, this guy's a winning head coach. He's won everywhere he's been. There's been few bad seasons in there, rarely, and this is the guy that's going to get it right, since he is 67 and he has no time to waste. But I think what we see is, I mean, to be honest, it's not like the players they have returning are bad. Like, they have Ethan Petrie. They have a lot of other talented pieces on this team. Can we just be honest and say maybe some of it has to do with the fact that, can we just say maybe they missed on some of the portal pickups that they have? Because I'm looking up and down at the roster. I mean, Nathan Hall is your best pickup by far. Brandon Stone's been fine, but and some of these were Monty Lee, Mark Kingston pickups in the portal that Mainieri just went ahead and signed off on. But like some of it has to do with the fact that maybe the guys that were brought in just have not lived up to the billing that they expected.
Yeah, and people always talk about, hey, until he gets his guys in here and that kind of stuff. And yes, recruiting's a little bit different, but in the age of the transfer portal, as long as you have the resources to, money-wise to play around with and stuff like that, you can flip a roster pretty quickly. And we saw a lot of guys come in from the transfer portal in the offseason that, like you said, a lot of them ended up kind of underwhelming for the most part. So, again, part of that is on the player because they got to go out there and play on the field, obviously, but that can also fall on the coaching staff for the evaluation of, okay, what did you think this guy was going to be able to do, and why is he not doing that?
Exactly. Like they have a lot of guys on this team that I think have such high potential that just have not lived up to it in a lot of ways, and I think some of that has to do with the coaches not getting everything out of them. Some of that just has to do with the on-field and the players not living up to the billing, but it goes hand in hand, and, look, Paul did say yesterday, he was asked so many questions about recruiting too, and he says recruiting's going well, which I do believe. They've brought in some good JUCO players that I think are going to be really helping out in terms of getting more power in here next year. But it's tough when you have to tell guys like, hey, if you want to be a part of a winning program, like, maybe not necessarily here right now, but you can be a part of the turnaround. And not everyone's going to buy into that, which can lead to it being tougher to get the guys that you want to come in right away.
Yeah. So, again, a lot of questions to be asked this offseason, and Coach Mainieri obviously not going anywhere anytime soon. Quickly here, last night, NBA playoffs, you had the Pacers pulling off the win 120-119 over the Cavs, take a 2-0 series lead in the Eastern semis. And then the nightcap last night, you had the Warriors picking up the 99-88 victory over the Timberwolves. Though early on in that game, you did have Steph Curry go down with a hamstring injury, missed the second half, and we did learn a little bit earlier on today that he will miss at least 1 week of the postseason after underwent an MRI today and has been diagnosed with a grade 1 left hamstring strain. So the Warriors going to be out without one of their cornerstones in Steph Curry for at least, I'm doing the math in my head, maybe like 3 games, if I'm thinking correctly there.
And it's a good thing they have a 1-0 lead because I think they could get by without Steph here for a little bit. But long term, I mean, absolutely not. I mean, this is even if Steph is aging, he's still such a good, talented player. And it's nice that you brought in Jimmy Butler during the season, so that, kind of supplements a little bit of what you're losing. But Steph is Steph, and that is a big loss, regardless of how you want to draw it up. And even if it's 3 games, they can probably get by, but you don't want to be in a big hole by the time he returns.
Tonight, you got the Knicks and the Celtics in game number 2 of the Eastern semis. Do you think the Celtics can make more than 25% of their threes tonight?
I mean, I would hope so. I mean, the amount of threes they've taken, you would hope that's the case. But
or if by the time, because they missed 45 3-pointers, by the time you miss 45 three-pointer number 30, maybe switch it up and do something different. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, clearly what you're doing is not working.
No, it wasn't working in game 1. And for the Knicks to go into the Garden and take the first game of that series, if they were to find a way to win game 2 tonight, I mean, Madison Square Garden is going to be rocking for games 3 and 4 regardless. But my goodness, over a rival, I mean, that'd be hard for the Celtics to come back from.
Absolutely huge. And again, Nuggets and Thunder, the nightcap tonight in game number 2 of the Western semifinals, with the Nuggets taking game number 1 the other day as they lead the series early on. Going to switch things up a little bit. We have a guest coming up at 2:30 talking Alabama football. So the greatest day in the history of the world is coming up next. It is the halftime show. It's our Jack Belcher, David Ayer producing on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. Halftime show. It's our Ed, Jack Belcher, along with you here on your Wednesday on the game. Again, kind of switching things up a little bit. Going to be talking to Charlie Potter of Bama Online coming up at 2:30 to discuss Alabama football coming away from spring. So doing the greatest day in the history of the world today at 2:15 instead. Jack, we always like to go old school with number one. 1877, the Cincinnati Enquirer first used the term bullpen to indicate the baseball field foul territory where late-coming spectators were herded into like cattle. I did not know that is why they were called bullpens. I learned something reading this.
Well, back in the day, if I'm remembering correctly, like back early 1900s, honestly going back to this time when baseball was kind of just getting going here, you didn't have the stadiums set up the way they are now. I mean, heck, like you had crowds of people in the outfield. That would basically be the wall, essentially. Like there weren't fences back then all around and stuff. I mean, it was just a very different time, and so it makes sense when you put it like that, just because you have thousands of people pouring on top of each other. And I kind of like how it's become the term bullpen.
Yeah, I don't know what I thought the reason for that was, but it definitely
sense.
Wasn't that. No, it makes sense. Makes perfect sense, and I think it's a catchy name that's obviously caught on, and obviously we now refer to it as the area where pitchers warm up before coming into the game. But I did not know that was the case.
No, and we've come to an era now where it's so rare to have bullpens on the field. Like so many of them are like locked up behind the outfield fence or just somewhere in their own little spot. But like Clemson has the bullpen in foul ground. A lot of minor league stadiums are like that too. But in the MLB, I don't think there's any at this point, because I think the A's were the last one to have in foul territory. But now it's completely changed. It's a long forgotten thing.
So, the A's are at that minor league park in Sacramento, and it's not on, because some minor league parks do still have it on the side.
They do, like the Knights in Charlotte do, and in Segra Park with the Fireflies, they have it like that too.
Yeah. So again, something a little bit more rare now, but that is the origins of the word bullpen when it comes to baseball. 1989, Michael Jordan hits the shot versus the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference first round, game number 5, to propel the Bulls to a 101-100 win. And we were not alive when this happened, but we've all seen this to some degree, because when he makes the shot, turns around, and then leaps in the air and kind of like thrusts his arm across his body. I think it was in a Gatorade commercial for a while. Like, this is one of the more iconic moments in Michael Jordan's history.
The dude looked like he was just floating on clouds when he took that shot. I mean, he's had so many iconic moments during his fantastic NBA and even college career too, when he was at North Carolina. But I mean, that shot right there, when you think of Michael Jordan and you pull up like clips, that's like one of the main highlights that comes up. That 97 versus the Jazz on that game-winning shot that he hit, the flu game. But I mean, this was way earlier in his career in the 80s, and a fantastic shot that he took there.
Yeah, and that Bulls team would go on to lose to the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals 2-4, and obviously we know once we got into the 90s what that team would go on to do. And if he doesn't go and play baseball for a couple years, who knows what else they could have accomplished.
Yeah, honestly, I mean,
or got suspended, depending on who you believe.
Yeah, on
when
who
it comes
you believe.
To conspiracies.
Yeah.
Oh man, let's fast forward to 2002. Dave, I need you to hit cut 15 for me, because on that day, Philadelphia 76er Allen Iverson took to the microphone, and what happened next was history.
Anybody tell you that I missed practice, if a coach say I missed practice and y'all hear it, then that's that. I mean, I might have missed one practice this year, but if somebody say he doesn't come to practice, it can be one practice out of all the practices this year. That's enough. If I can't practice, I can't practice, man. I'm hurt, I'm hurt. I mean, simple as that. It ain't about that. I mean, it's not about that at all. You know what I'm saying? I mean, but it's easy to talk about. It's easy to sum it up when you just talk about practice. We sitting here, I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice.
Well, Coach.
I mean, listen, we talking about practice, not a game, not a game, not a game. We talking about practice, not a game, not the game that I go out there and die for and play every game like it's my last. Not the game. We talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that, man?
So that was only a snippet of it. He proceeded to say practice 22 times in the overall rant. That stemmed from his 76ers getting bounced in the first round of the playoffs by the Celtics. Head coach Larry Brown had criticized AI for not showing up to practices, which is where that famous rant ended up coming from.
And we're talking about a guy that he's an NBA Hall of Famer. I mean, the guy averaged 26 points for his career. And, I mean, we're talking about a guy that, I mean, it's practice. Like, if he misses a practice, like you said, it is what it is. I mean, at least not missing games like you see guys now with load management and stuff.
I feel like that moment may have even superseded his NBA career in terms of how people know him.
Oh, totally.
Because there are people that don't know anything about the NBA, never watched a game in their life, that if you say practice rant, they're going to say, oh, that was Allen Iverson.
Exactly. Like, it's so iconic to a point where it's like, it probably gets blown out of proportion, but like, it's so funny to like look back at it. And it's iconic now that we're talking about this 23 years later. It's crazy.
Last one here, 2016. Big Sexy himself, Bartolo Colon, became the oldest player to hit his first Major League home run, connecting less than 3 weeks before his 43rd birthday, helped the Mets in a 6-3 win over the Padres. And like any time, and obviously we don't do it anymore because we have designated hitters, but anytime a pitcher hit a home run, obviously the place would go nuts. I've never heard it louder than when Bartolo Colon hit the home run for the Mets.
You got the audio for this one?
I don't. I should have pulled it up.
Man, I'm telling you, it was a great call too by SNY, but also like, I mean, that's the most insane thing you could have ever seen. Like, I still remember it in San Diego. He's facing James Shields, who, my gosh, I mean, what a low moment for him. I mean, that was just insane seeing that happen, and it's literally the impossible.
Yeah. Well, and I guess when you think about it, because he's a big guy,
yeah,
there's a lot of power in there. And again, did he work on his hitting? Probably not. But you get that right pitch over the plate, and the swing's good enough, it's going to go far.
I mean, it's just like he put the bat on the ball directly, and it's just, he didn't even look like he was taking much of an effort. It's just, he just puts it out there, and the thing sailed way down the left field line. I mean, the fact that he was able to do that at his age and his shape, I mean, he was a great pitcher, though. Do not get it wrong, but my goodness, that was something insane.
I also loved how his helmet would never stay on anytime he was batting.
Oh, no. In 2016, man. We're 9 years ago.
Had the worst fitting helmet of all time.
Yeah.
I know. That was
Big Sexy.
Big Sexy, man. That was a special moment for sure. We'll jump back into our previewing South Carolina's opponents coming up next. Charlie Potter of Bama Online going to join us to talk about what's going on with the Crimson Tide out in Tuscaloosa. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, David Ayer, along with you on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. Halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri. Cabernet producing on the other side of the glass. Continuing on our trip around the SEC, taking a look at South Carolina's opponents for the 2025 season. Now look ahead to Alabama as the Gamecocks narrowly escaped Tuscaloosa with a loss last year to an Alabama team in year number 1 under Kalen DeBoer. Joining us now on the Love Chevrolet phone lines to talk about the Crimson Tide is Charlie Potter from Bama Online. First of all, Charlie, appreciate your time this morning. How are things out there in T-Town?
They're good. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I mentioned a moment ago, Kalen DeBoer in year number 1 there at Alabama. Of course, big shoes to fill, taking over for Nick Saban. Depending on who you ask, it either went okay or it went terrible in terms of, just missing out on the college football playoff and having some tough losses along the way. What's the vibe now that he's gone through his second spring and getting set for his second year as the head coach out there?
I think vibes are pretty high. A lot of it had to do with what they're able to return because Alabama had 3 underclassmen declared for the draft. That was Jahad Campbell, Tyler Booker, and Jalen Milroe. And those are the first 3 guys off the board back last month in Green Bay. But they had a lot of guys who were draft eligible choose to come back, a lot on the defensive side of the ball too. And then you tack that on with what they were able to add via the portal, via a really good recruiting class, and then in the spring transfer window, which is now already come and gone, they had 0 scholarship players choose to transfer. So I think that a lot of these guys, from a player standpoint, have bought in. It's going to look more like a Kalen DeBoer team. Some of that is going to be benefited because you have Ryan Grubb now as the offensive coordinator. So I think there's a lot of excitement. There's still a lot of questions. Obviously, quarterback's going to be a big one. People want to see what's going to happen along the offensive line, if they can improve there, if they can get more pressure on the quarterback, things like that. But the pieces are there for, a first-year head coach that comes in and you see just a ton of players leave after Nick Saban retired to win 9 games, and people are thinking it's the end of the world. I think they're going to take a step in the right direction this fall. But, again, there's still a lot that needs to be figured out, and a lot of guys still need to show signs of improvement.
Hey, Charlie, it's Jack. Thanks for joining us. You mentioned kind of at the end there the expectations people have had, and it's obvious to have such high expectations after what Nick Saban did for so many years, and you bring in Kalen DeBoer. He does well at Washington, and it was a disappointment in a lot of people's eyes last year, losing that ReliaQuest Bowl at the end of the year to finish with 4 losses. But my question to you is just how have the vibes been over the last few months since that loss and kind of moving forward here? I mean, how much pressure is on Kalen DeBoer to get this thing right in a lot of ways and do more this season?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think seeing what comes back, seeing the guys that have bought in, the fact that they didn't have anybody enter the transfer portal, it's kind of a crazy thing to say in this day and age of college football. You expect a couple. I think all of us as beat writers, you go into it, trying to get your mind around, well, who could leave? You need to get stories ready, and that just wasn't the case for Alabama. It was a really quiet 2-week period there for that 10-day window. And so I think that expectations are always going to be high here. I do think that you look at it, even going, I know everybody points to the Vanderbilt loss, and that was very bad coming off of the big win over Georgia. But it's the Oklahoma loss, even more so than the Michigan loss. So I think it's really stuck in everyone's craw because you win that game and you're probably in the college football playoff. You might even be in the SEC championship game. So it's a situation where they were right there on the cusp of, maybe accomplishing some of the goals they set forth before the season started, and they fell short. They fell on their face, quite frankly, in Norman. So I think expectations are still high. I think people want to see Alabama get back to the playoff now because the field has expanded. But I don't think you're not here in a situation where it's a national championship or bust anymore, at least not yet. But I think there's a lot of high expectations and positivity around this program, even though they did, lay an egg in Tampa to end the season.
And talking to Charlie Potter of Bama Online about Alabama ahead of the 2025 season. Let's talk quarterback now. It seems like Ty Simpson is in the lead in that battle with Austin Mack and Keelan Russell. After spring practice is now wrapped up, How big of a gap is it between him and those two guys, and how long of a leash would he have if he does start to struggle when the season begins?
Yeah, I think that last part is to be determined because Alabama starts the season on the road at Florida State. And I know Florida State had an embarrassing season this past year with only 2 wins, but they've made some changes, and that's going to be for any quarterback making their first true start on the road in week 1 is going to be tough. So it makes sense. I'm not surprised at all that Ty Simpson exits spring practice as kind of the leader in the clubhouse for that quarterback battle. But, I mean, he's still got work to do. Those other guys are pushing. I don't think the race is over by any stretch of the imagination, but he's the veteran guy. He's going into his 4th year in the program. He's backed up Jalen Milroe the last 2 years. He's seen the most playing time of any of these guys because Keelan Russell's had a semester on a college campus. Austin Mack's played in 1 game, and that's against Mercer last year in his first year at Alabama after coming over from Washington. So given the fact that Ty is the veteran in the room, it's not surprising to hear that he's in front because he was the most consistent this spring. I think that Austin Mack kind of split reps with him, but it was a situation where maybe he pushed a little too hard. He was pressing things. And then Keelan Russell had some freshman mistakes, but he probably made the most wow plays of the group. He ended up where he was in the recruiting rankings for a reason. He's a talented player. He could be, a Tua or a Bryce Young, someone like that, just because of maybe living up to the expectations from a recruiting ranking standpoint. But Ty Simpson is no slouch. He's a former 5-star kid. He's a guy that's he's not maybe as mobile as Jalen Milroe. No one is. But he can make plays with his legs. So he has a prime opportunity in front of him. It's hard to say what the gap is right now, but I think he's got a firm grip on the position, but he's got, summer workouts, preseason camp to go through. And I think those guys are going to continue to push him. And Alabama wants competition. They didn't lose any of these quarterbacks to the transfer portal, I think for good reason, but those other guys they want to start too. And I think that's good for the room.
How have things been looking on sticking with the offensive side of the ball here on the offensive line? Because you're replacing a guy like Tyler Booker at left guard. That's a big hole to fill there. But outside of that, and you mentioned not losing anybody, how has that looked in the spring and now as you head into summer, then fall camp?
It's kind of TBD because they had some guys banged up. Caden Proctor, their left tackle, didn't practice at all this spring. Or he did, but it was limited. He was like in a black jersey, so he wasn't really doing much team stuff. They actually moved some interior guys around to kind of supplement the tackle room because that's one of the thinnest on the roster. You look at it, they have four true offensive tackles, and 2 of those are new to the program. So they're going to need big years from Proctor and Wilkin Formby, who's going to step into that right tackle role. They have Parker Belster back at the center. That's big. Jaden Roberts is back at right guard. That's also big. But he needs to prove he can stay healthy because he was kind of in a rotation last year. And I really think right now the biggest question mark is at that left guard spot that Booker left vacant. And he's tough to replace, not only from a production standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint. And they've got some guys. Gino Vandermark transferred in from Michigan State last year. He saw a lot of first-team minutes. They brought in Cam Dewberry from Texas A&M. They have the number 1 interior lineman in the country, and Michael Carroll, who's on campus. They've got some guys that can fill that role, but I think that one's still kind of up in the air. If they can solidify that and then get Wilkin Formby to play like he did toward the end of the year and not like he did at the beginning of the year against the South Florida team where he got replaced by Elijah Pritchett, then this offensive line can take a step in the right direction. And they made progress last year. I think they only gave up 24 or 25 sacks, and that's coming from 49 the year before in 2023. So they took strides in that direction, but I think consistency is what they're looking for. And with a new quarterback and one that's not maybe as mobile as a Jalen Milroe, they're going to have to play well. So that's really – I know quarterback gets a lot of the attention, but offensive line, if they can get that group to play well, then this team will be really good this fall.
About 2 more minutes here with Charlie Potter of Bama Online. You mentioned Jahad Campbell going off to the NFL, getting picked up in the first round there. When you kind of look at what is coming back on defense, namely guys like L.T. Overton and Deontay Lawson, who's going to be kind of the dude on that front – or, on that side of the ball this year?
They've got a lot because a lot of dudes decided to come back, and they were dudes before. I think, Lawson coming back from the injury, it's going to be interesting to see how he looks. He and Justin Jefferson in the middle of that defense. They also brought in Akai Hill-Green from Colorado at inside backer. Up front with Tim Keenan at defensive tackle, you got a guy like James Smith who's going into his third year who they expect big things from. And then off the edge, I think that's where they need the most to step up, because LT Overton had a big year last year. He just didn't finish at the quarterback. They need more sacks. They need guys like him. They brought in Kelby Collins from Florida. You have Quay Russaw going to his third year. Jamarian Latham's back for his sixth year. They need those guys to really get pressure on the quarterback up front, because the back end looks really good with Damani Jackson and Xavier Brown back at corner. You have Bray Hubbard and Keon Sabb at safety. You've got some really promising players in the defensive backfield. I think that front, if they can get pressure on the quarterback, then this defense can take a step in the right direction and really be a really scary group.
Here's Charlie Potter. You can read his stuff at Bama Online. We appreciate you taking your time, and I'm sure I'll be talking to you again before Bama comes to town this fall.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll come back, and we'll wrap up the hour with Firehouse Tips Text of the Hour, and I believe do our handoff with Jay Phillips as well. It is the halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry, David Ayer on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. It's halftime show. Tyler Head, Jack Veltri, Kevin Dave wrapping things up here on your Wednesday on the game. We'll turn things over to Jay and Elijah with the post-game show coming up here in just a couple minutes' time. It's time for our Firehouse Subs text of the hour, 803-404-6100. We've got more education when it comes to the Akron Zips. Nameless Texter informs us Akron originally was a small college school in the 1937 season until 1972. Went D2 in 1973 before becoming a 1AA member in 1980 and eventually joining what is now known as FBS in 1987. I've learned more about the Akron Zips today than I ever thought I would.
I did not think this is where the discussion would be heading for most of the day, but I can appreciate it, and that's what happens in a 3-hour window when we're talking about different topics, and then we're talking about one thing, and then people are interested and want to keep talking about it. I did not think it was going to be Akron.
By the way, is your voice hurt yet?
It's getting there. You know, I probably won't talk the rest of the day, to be honest. I'll just sit there covering the softball game in my room and just peace and quiet and nothing going on.
I don't think I can get away with that one. My wife does like when I talk to her, so I don't think I can get away with not talking the rest of the day, unfortunately.
Actually, wait, I got to probably talk to Caroline.
Yeah,
so.
that'd probably be a good idea.
Yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, man, it's been fun though for these past 3 hours.
Oh, we got 2 more days of it. You got we'll combine with the extra point. We still got 14 more hours together over the course of not 14 more hours, 8 more hours over the course of the next 2 days.
Let's go.
I was like 14. That's way too much.
Yes.
But no, it'd be fun. We'll have a couple more teams that we'll be looking into coming up tomorrow in terms of planning and looking ahead to South Carolina's opponents for this upcoming fall. I did want to hit this before we get out of here. I love team names and the process of naming teams. And if you've been paying attention to hockey the past couple years, there's been one team that stood out among the rest, the Utah Hockey Club. Mm-hmm. They have not had a formal mascot since joining the NHL. Well, that changes because they will now be known as the Utah Mammoths. I was originally very much on board for the Utah Yeti.
Me too.
Apparently, there was a copyright issue with Yeti coolers that did not allow that to happen, but I don't think Mammoths is too bad.
Yeah, I like it. I think it looks good, and I think it's singular.
Mammoth, okay. So hockey is very, like, I know in the NBA, like, you have the Heat, you have the Jazz, that kind of stuff, but hockey is very prevalent when it comes to the singular names.
Oh, yeah. And Mammoth, I mean, it makes sense because it's just one thing. It's not like you need, like, the Islanders, for instance. Like, I truly don't even know what an Islander is.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. What's a Wild?
Yeah. What is a Wild? And their mascot's like a bear, I think.
Sure.
So,
I guess the Wild in general is encompassing all of it.
Yeah, I guess.
Like the great outdoors.
I don't know, but I do like this logo. I think it's very clean, very simple. I kind of like how it's obviously supposed to look like a mammoth, but also in the background, it kind of looks like the shaping of the head looks like a mountain a little bit.
Okay.
So subtle detail there.
That's smart. I like that.
Now, I've seen a few comparisons to the fact this looks eerily similar to the Predators logo, which I can't help but notice it does. 2 totally different things, but the logo idea kind of resembles it a little bit. So
I see a little bit of it. But yeah, they've been the Utah Hockey Club for a little bit now, so it is nice to see them have. It's always funny when you're like looking at the bottom scroll on ESPN, and obviously with the NHL they use team nicknames, and then you just have like Utah versus the Ducks or something like that.
It's always so weird when Utah Hockey Club, Washington football team. That was a weird one. I mean, we're talking about this like it's soccer or something where you have it like that. But, you know, it takes a little bit of time to get used to these names. But, like, with the Commanders, it's taken time. The Guardians, it's taken time. But I think with the Mammoth here, I kind of like it. Yeti would have been better. But Mammoth is not too bad.
But like, when it comes to the Guardians and the Commanders, you're changing a name that has stood for a long time, which is why it's so hard to get used to. I don't think this is going to be a problem with people saying, oh, the Utah Mammoth, because, again, it's still new.
Yeah, and the Kraken with Seattle, I mean, that's fairly new, too.
I like to say that's the greatest sports name there is out there.
I think it's a great name.
The Seattle Kraken is phenomenal.
I like it. And you even have the Golden Knights from, I mean, they haven't even been around for like a decade yet. So I like the changes here. I still wish there was a way the Coyotes could still exist.
Yeah.
But, like, I understand because they had such cool uniforms, man, and those throwbacks they had, I mean, phenomenal uniforms. But at the price of making a new team in Utah, I mean, I'm all for it.
I believe this was also a fan vote, right?
I think so. Yes, I think so. Yes.
And that was like an in-arena type thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's just, you know, I like the logo. I think it's, if it were the Yeti would be so much cooler. Like, imagine the cool stuff you could do, merchandise and stuff. But the Mammoth and the way the logo looks with the mountains kind of snowy in the background, and it's cool. But
yeah,
what is the actual mascot going to look like?
So when you think of like a woolly mammoth, you think of like, you know, prehistoric times and probably like a frozen tundra. So,
Ice Age.
Yeah, like literally Ice Age, which I did see somebody point out that now we've gotten 2 characters from Ice Age with the saber tooth and then now the mammoth. If we can get like a squirrel chasing a nut, then we'll kind of complete the
trio.
Trilogy. Or what is Sid? What is he in Ice Age?
Let me look
what
it
kind
up.
of animal is he?
What animal is Sid from Ice Age? He's a giant ground sloth.
Oh, okay.
So,
hey, you know what, sloth? I'm surprised that's not a team name yet.
The Seattle Sloth, like
Seattle Sloth.
But what team would fit that mold, though? You know,
I don't know. Somebody. There's going to be more expansion teams before too long. So somebody become the Sloths or the sloth. The sloth.
Yeah,
no S. The sloth.
like isn't Australia? No, that's koalas, right?
Yeah, koalas their thing.
Yeah, so I don't know who's gonna take up the mantle.
I guess the sloth would imply that you're very slow.
Yeah, and you probably don't want that, to be honest. But,
that's true.
Yeah, the acorns.
There you go. All right, appreciate you hanging out today, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, see you tomorrow, man.
Halftime show with Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell, or post-game show with Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell coming up next. This has been the Halftime Show here on The Game.